First, our top story this hour, court papers filed on two key Trump campaign aides. Special counsel Robert Mueller's team says that Michael Cohen, the president's former personal lawyer, is a vital witness in their investigation.
Now the Justice Department says candidate Trump directed Cohen to make illegal payments to buy the silence of women whose claims of extramarital affairs threatened his presidential campaign. Mr. Trump, of course, has denied having an affair.
And prosecutors say that former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort broke his plea deal by lying to investigators. Court papers claim that Manafort lied about his contacts with an aide who allegedly had ties to Russian intelligence.
And here with insight on these and other developments in Washington is Washington Post national correspondent Philip Bump. Philip, good morning.
Morning, sir.
Let's start with the Cohen revealings basically yesterday in that filing. What do we learn now here from that?
So we learned a couple of new details, not a whole lot, not an expansive amount of information. We learned, for example, that Cohen apparently met with another Russian national over the course of the campaign, 2015, 2016, someone who had some involvement in the Trump Tower Moscow deal. There had already been rumblings about that. We learned primarily, though, that the government has implicated Donald Trump directly in those two charges that Cohen pled guilty to last August. He pled guilty to two campaign finance-related charges. At the time, Cohen said that he'd been directed to take those actions by President Trump. In this court document, the government attorneys, U.S. attorneys themselves say that Donald Trump is implicated.
Is this Cohen's word theoretically against the president?
It is to some extent. However, the document also articulates that Cohen provided them with recordings in which both he spoke with Trump about the deals, and Cohen later said that the deals were made in order to influence the election. And that's the thing that really violates campaign finance laws, according to an expert I spoke with yesterday, and that's particularly problematic.
What's the biggest thing that we learned in relation to Paul Manafort at this point?
So Paul Manafort was even less informative in the sense that there were a lot of things that were redacted.
Right.
Paul Manafort had this relationship with a guy named Konstantin Kilimnik, who worked for him when he was doing work in Ukraine. Kilimnik apparently has some theoretical ties to Russian intelligence. There's a lot of redacted stuff about Kilimnik in there, which we don't really know a whole lot about. The main thing is that the prosecution was outlining that Manafort had lied to them on a number of occasions, trying to make the case for ways in which he'd been deceptive. That was the main thing we learned. More details about those deceptions.
Do you think the information in these documents might change the focus for Democrats who take control of Congress in January?
It probably won't necessarily. These documents themselves probably won't shift the direction the Democrats are planning on heading. The Democrats have this choice. They have to decide if they're going to try and legislate with the Republicans in the Senate and figure out, what they're going to do there, or if they're going to instead put more of their emphasis on Donald Trump in these investigations, which, the Republican majority in the House didn't spend a lot of time on over the course of the past 2 years. I don't think these documents change that, but I think it certainly is the case that as more comes out with the Russia investigation, the Democrats will be champing more at the bit to dive into them.
What about Paul Manafort? What do the papers show on that?
Well, I think that the Manafort papers, the big question is where this is going, right?
Yes.
And so we got some new hints that Mueller, for example, had been looking more at this figure Kilimnik, who we knew was sort of in the background. He's already been indicted on potential obstruction of justice charges. But, it's still, look, the Mueller investigation is this giant black box that all of us are trying to sort of crack open.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, these were just little slivers of light we got yesterday.
Besides the investigation, it feels like the long goodbye when it comes to White House Chief of Staff John Kelly. What do we know right now?
So what we know right now is there have been rumors for some time that John Kelly has been on his way out. At one point, even John Kelly and President Trump stepped forward and said, no, he's going to be here through 2020 to try and quell that. But look, it's a tough job trying to constrain Donald Trump in particular. That's John Kelly's job, is to try and keep the White House in order. And Donald Trump makes that very difficult. So it's been rumored for some time. Now the rumblings are getting louder, and I guess we'll just sort of have to see.
We should mention that Philip Bump came with an entourage today.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Diva that you are, beautiful entourage.
Officially known as Thomas Bump, but we also call him Baby Bump here. We have a little video of him. There he is.
Yeah. Adorable.
He's waiting for you, and it's great to see him. Philip, thanks so much for being with us.